The art of magic. The art of magic is the art of employing invisible or so-called spiritual agencies to obtain certain visible results. Such agencies are not necessarily invisible entities flitting about in vacant space, ready to come at the command of anyone who has learned certain incantations and ceremonies, but they consist principally in the unseen but nevertheless powerful influences of the emotions and the will, of desires and passions, thought and imagination, love and hate, fear and hope, faith and doubt, etc., etc. They are the powers of what is called the soul. They are employed everywhere and by everybody every day, consciously or unconsciously, willingly or unwillingly, and while those that cannot control or resist such influences, but are controlled by them, are passive instruments, mediums through which such unseen powers act, and often their unwilling slaves, those who are able to guide and control such influences by gaining control over themselves, are in proportion to their controlling capacity, active and powerful and true magicians, and may employ their powers for good or for evil. We see, therefore, that with the exception of irresponsible persons, everyone who has any willpower is, insofar as he exercises that willpower, an active magician. A white magician if he employs them for good, a black magician if he uses them for the purposes of evil. There are people in the East and some in the West through whom extraordinary feats, such as are usually classified as magic, are performed, but it does not logically follow that such people are therefore conscious magicians. It only shows that the power which acts through their organism is a magic power, and the supposed magician may be merely the instrument through which invisible, intelligent powers perform such feats. And he may not even know who or what such a power is. We all cannot honestly say we have life, for life does not belong to us, and we cannot control or monopolize it. All we can say, without arrogance and presumption, is that we are instruments through which the universal one life manifests itself in the form of a human being. We are all mediums through which the universal one life acts. Only when we know our own selves and can control the life principle within ourselves can we become our own masters. He who thinks that he has any power whatever of his own thinks foolish, for all the powers he has are lent him by nature, or more correctly speaking, by that eternal spiritual power which acts in and from the center of nature, and which men have called God, because they have found it to be the source of all good, the one reality within the universe and within every being. No one will deny that man, besides having physical powers, is also temporarily endowed with the mental and even spiritual energies. We love, respect, or obey a person, not on account of his superior bodily strength, but on account of his intellectual and moral worth, or while we are under the spell of some real or imaginary authority that we may believe him to possess. A king or a bishop has, as a person, not necessarily any more physical power than his lackey or butler, and must make himself known before he will be obeyed. A captain may be bodily the weakest man in his company, and still his soldiers obey him. We love beauty, harmony, and sublimity, not on account of their usefulness for material purposes, but because they satisfy a corresponding inner sense, which does not belong to the physical plane. Civilization gains ground more by moral and intellectual influences than by the power of the bayonet. And it is a true saying that in our age, the pen is mightier than the sword. What would be a world without the magic power of love, of beauty and harmony? How would a world look if made after a pattern furnished by modern science? A world in which the universal power of truth were not recognized could be nothing else but a world of maniacs and filled with hallucinations. In such a world, art and poetry could not exist. Justice would become a convenience, honesty be equivalent with imbecility. To be truthful would be to be foolish, and the idol of self, the only God worthy of any consideration. Magic may be said to be that science which deals with the mental and moral powers of man, and shows what control he may exercise over himself and others. In order to study the powers of man, it is necessary to investigate what man is and what relation he bears to the universe. And such an investigation, if properly conducted, will show that the elements which compose the essential man are identical with those we find in the universe. That is to say, that the universe is the macrocosm, and man, its true copy, the microcosm.